Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have an early impression video coming, and it's on a Roja Dove, which is a house that I always enjoy trying their stuff. You know, as you can see, I'm a fan, even though I do give him a hard time. I think it's justified. I think it's fair to be a fan on one hand of his work and what he's created, and really what he's been able to do to break through the industry. And, you know, I was listening to a fragrance stream the other day, and they were talking about how some of these old-time brands that were around 50, 100 years ago, brands like Coty or brands like even Estee Lauder. When's the last time you've seen an Estee Lauder marketed fragrance, right? That was the topic of this stream on the Scented Devils Twitter channel, or I'm sorry, Instagram channel. And I always enjoy hearing different points of view. And he brought up a very good point because he was basically saying that, you know, now Estee Lauder is reliant on these high-end brands like Frederic Malle, which is a fragrance that we're going to talk about in relation to this particular Roja we're going to mention today. When's the last time you've seen a Coty marketed fragrance? Not a distributor, not Coty as the distributor of a Gucci fragrance or something like that, but an actually Coty distributed fragrance, right? You don't see that anymore. And so they're focused much more on these upstream brands, these brands like Roja and Frederic Malle and Maison Francis Kurkdjian that can charge $300 to $700, $800, $900 a bottle, and people will pay it. You know, the amount of the citizens who are willing to spend that kind of money is a much smaller amount than in the old days when everyone used to just go, you know, buy a bottle of Coty's Musk or whatever it is, you know. But still, it is an interesting exercise to think about because I like wearing old school fragrances like Sex Appeal or Coty's Musk or, you know, stuff like that. And so I like playing this game in my head and really thinking about the way that the fragrance game has evolved overall, not just in the short amount of time, but over the long term, right? So Roja is a house that I understand he is divisive, okay? And so I want to be open and give you my honest impressions. That's the whole point of this entire channel, is to give you guys my honest impressions of the fragrances that I try. Now, your biases are going to come into a perfume. It's impossible to go through a, you know, session like this and not let your biases seep in. But I'm going to try to be as fair as possible. And the fragrance we're going to talk about today is from a sample set that was very kindly sent to me by D.L. Qualia. I've had this for maybe 6 months now, 7 months. It's been a while. And some of them I've talked about, some of them I still have to do videos on, but slowly we're going to start knocking these videos out. Today's video is on a fragrance that was initially created in 2014. And when it was initially created, the cap was red and black and green and white to represent the UAE flag. It's called United Arab Emirates. And then it was apparently put into the generic Middle Eastern Roja you know, bottle that happened in 2017. So I don't know if a reformulation happened then, but United Arab Emirates initially came out in 2014 and then was reformulated or put into the new packaging, new presentation in 2017. And this Middle Eastern line is a line that I enjoy digging into because I always feel like I learn a lot when I tried this line from Roja. And you know, it's a line though that I have 0 full bottles of. 0. I don't have any full bottles of the Middle Eastern Rojas, but I do have many of the Discovery Atomizers. I always think they're interesting to try. No full bottles. This is an interesting fragrance, and I'll kind of take you through it. So it's listed as an Oriental floral fragrance, which is very true. And here's kind of how it opens up. So when you first spray this fragrance, you're hit with what feels like this earthy, dirty, and at the same time, green vibe, okay? So imagine you're kind of playing in the dirt. Imagine you spray on one of Roja's other creations, okay? Like a high-class Roja, but you're out playing in the dirt, and you just sprayed it on to where the perfume is like still wet on your hand. Let's say you oversprayed, you hit yourself with 3 or 4 sprays in one spot, and then you stuck your hand in the dirt, right? And dirt got stuck to the fragrance and you dusted it off and some of the perfume came off with it and there's dirt on your hand and then you sniff your hand. That is the opening. And the opening, I'm a big fan of because it uses a couple notes. It uses bergamot and artemisia, okay? And that artemisia note is one of the links to the past. There's a couple links to the past in this fragrance. Artemisia is a note that was very commonly used in masculine fragrances of the days gone by that I love, the 70s and 80s stuff, right? And so it leaves you with this green perfumed dirt impression. And that artemisia, that green artemisia at the top is kind of the emphasis when you first spray. Because you're going to think a couple things if you have experience with Middle Eastern fragrances. Number one is you're going to think Cypriol. Cypriol is instantly going to pop in your head because Cypriol has this this woody, twangy smell to it. And it's a very distinct smell. Once you have smelled Cypriol, you will be able to kind of pick it out. And I've actually come to love Cypriol on a fragrance. It's one of my, newer favorite notes, I would say, that some of these niche houses are using, especially in these Middle Eastern fragrances, okay? Cypriol is a note that I've come to really love. In fact, I did a review on a Amouage fragrance recently called Silver Oud. And these two fragrances are, while they're not kissing cousins, they're very close to each other, okay? In the sense that they try to accomplish something very similar, and yet they go about it in completely different ways, and I love that about both of these fragrances. This goes about it in a pure Roja fashion. Everything is extremely polished in United Arab Emirates. It has that Roja high class. Someone wrote in a comment, this is what you'd want to wear if you're riding in a Lamborghini in the United Arab Emirates. Yes, I would agree with that. This goes about it differently. And this is a little rougher. It also has much more smoke in the dry down. But if you like the Cypriol when you first spray Silver Oud from Amouage, you will probably like the opening of United Arab Emirates because even though Cypriol isn't listed until the base, it kind of leaks upward, if you will. And so while you're initially getting most of that green, old school masculine artemisia with bergamot, the florals are beginning to come in the mid. But with those florals, you begin to get the start of a Cypriol accord. It starts very early. It doesn't really take hold until about 3 hours in. But imagine you're smelling this vegetal vibe because of the green artemisia, but a Middle Eastern vegetal vibe, if that makes sense. That's how I would describe. And by the way, this is a 5-hour dry down, and this I just sprayed about an hour ago. So I do have a fresher spray, and I've got the dry down right here. So I have been wearing this for a bit, but this is an early impression. This is not something I have tons of experience with. I did have a chance to wear it to bed. And so I've probably went through about 1 ml of this myself, 1 ml, I would say. And so I do have some experience with it. That's why I like doing these early impression videos, because I want to give you guys a little bit of how the fragrance develops as well, right? And so a couple interesting notes. I did read that a couple of folks mentioned that when you first spray this fragrance, it gives off this petrol, like this gasoline or this petrol-like vibe, this effect. And I think what's happening is this very strange blend of the aforementioned ingredients, along with florals. I don't think there's any petrol vibe to me personally. Not in the sense that I would expect a petrol note or accord to, come off as, because when I think petrol, I think Fahrenheit. And I think this little bad boy right here, just you can barely see it on the side of my chair. This is Portrayal Man from Amouage. One of the best gasoline petrol openings in modern niche perfumery I've ever smelled. This is not that. But I do think that it can almost trick your mind that you're smelling petrol. Because the reason it can trick your mind is the mid. And the mid has this jasmine from grass, cistus labdanum, ylang ylang, May rose, clove, and geranium, okay? And the other thing that I've noticed people say is that there is a Taif rose note in this perfume. And I don't get any Taif rose. I think what tends to throw people off is this. Whenever you look at the pictures on this perfume, when you look at the advertisement, when you look at the way that Roja actually marketed this fragrance as a brand, and I think he's a brilliant marketer. If there's one thing Roja gets perfect score in, it's marketing. The guy is, somebody left a comment saying Roja is a walking flex, and he is. He is a walking flex. You look at him, everything about him, from his $1,000 slippers to his accent, to his purple suits that he wears, it is a pure out and out flex, right? And you know, it's I don't want to say it's misleading, because it very well, maybe there is a drop of real Taif rose, but I have a little bit of experience with real Taif rose. I think there's real Taif rose in this, Paris Monte Carlo Rose de Taif Extrait. The regular one I don't like, the EDP. The Extrait is the one that you want to go for. It basically looks like this. And it is a little bit more expensive, but this is a beautiful Taif rose fragrance. Obviously, the king of Taif rose for me is actually called Malik Al Taif, the king of Taif, that Arige Ladore did. I did an entire video on that one. You can go check it out under the Arige Ladore playlist. And, you know, that is 100% full bottle worthy. The best Taif rose fragrance I've ever smelled. And Taif rose basically gives off this fresh, lemony, honeyed, like a little bit fruity, but very lemony. It has a very distinct lemony profile. If you look at the inside of a Taif rose, it has this, in the middle, there's these yellow-like, I don't even know what they're called, but when you look at the Taif rose, you've got the petals, and then you have these yellow parts coming out of the very center. That yellow part, when you look at the pink flower with the yellow bits coming out of the middle of the Taif rose, that's basically how it smells. That's the color in my mind of how it smells when you wear it, okay? And I could understand somebody getting tricked up by the advertisement, because they show a mountain of Taif. They show multiple Taif roses with the bottle, with what looks like a piece of oud in the front, and maybe some frankincense around the outside, you know. And it's brilliant marketing, but I think that there's no Taif rose in here. Or if there is, there's just a tiny drop that's almost imperceptible to my nose. So visually, it's not matching with what I'm smelling, if that makes sense. I don't get any real Taif rose like I do, like I said, in this right here, which is one of my favorite Taif rose fragrances just to wear. It's so lemony and fresh. But there is this lemony smell when you first spray the fragrance as well. So I mentioned that green Artemisia, that old school green Artemisia. But remember, when I say old school green Artemisia, don't think that you're going to smell an Artemisia note from the 80s. Okay, you're not. You're not going to smell this hardcore green, harsh, masculine Artemisia, which I love. You're going to smell Artemisia done in the Roja. Everything in many of Roja's fragrances are very specifically made to be posh. It's made to be where someone that can have almost no experience with fragrances can smell this and go, wow, this smells like the Rolls Royce of a fragrance. You know, it really does. It smells like the Lamborghini of a fragrance, because everything is rounded, everything is posh, everything, all of the ingredients have just a little extra feel to them. You know what I mean? It feels like you're smelling something that has an extra posh touch. And sometimes I like that, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I want to wear, you know, stuff from the 80s like this. This is Pascal Moribito OR Black just sitting behind me. You know, this is absolutely stunning. Sometimes I want to wear something like this, though, that is, you know, bold and challenging and isn't rounded off. It isn't posh. It's the old beater car that still looks badass on the road. You know what I mean? From the 80s, because someone took care of it. It's a different, it's two completely different wearing experiences. This Roja plays the Roja fiddle, if you will, the Roja tune, to an absolute perfect T. I mean, it does exactly what it's supposed to do, and it does what it does very nice. Now, along with that green Artemisia is that basically lemony-like smell when you first spray, and that lemony smell is the bergamot. And the bergamot here is beautiful. It is high class. It is quality. And what it begins to blend with in the heart, to my nose, the most prominent note in the heart is the geranium. Okay? Geranium is the main note in the heart, not Taif rose. There may be a little bit of rose in here. There may be May rose. Even in, even in Malik Al Taif, the greatest Taif rose fragrance I've ever smelled, for me, it's blended with Indian rose, because Indian rose will sometimes give off this Taif rose-like vibe. So there could be other types of roses used here, because Taif rose is extremely expensive, especially in, if you want to get the high quality. There's different levels, obviously, that you could buy. Just like all ingredients, there's different levels. But Taif rose in general is a very expensive ingredient because of how small the amount of yield that comes out of those crops. And it's a once-a-year thing, and that's it. And it's only in one city in the world, close to Mecca in Saudi Arabia. And so I say that because geranium can sometimes give off different facets. Sometimes if you smell geranium, it can smell spicy. Sometimes it can smell like you're smelling like a peppery rose, right? And sometimes it can have this like sour tart-like smell, this sour tart rose-like smell. Here, it's the sour tart geranium that I'm getting. And that sour tart geranium mixing with that earthy, dirty, and again, keep this in mind, even though I say earthy and dirty Artemisia because it's the only way I can describe it, in reality, it's Roja'd up, it's posh. So that's why I say, imagine you sprayed expensive Roja Dove fragrance on your hand and then stuck your hand in the dirt, right? You may still be getting a little dirt, but underneath it, you're getting that posh, I'm an expensive fragrance thing happening in the background. And so you take that lemony bergamot and you mix it with that sour geranium, okay? Tart, sour geranium that will sometimes smell of roses. In fact, there are perfumers who will actually use geranium in place of rose. Like, for example, Jean-Claude Elena in Frederic Mall's Rose and Queer, there was no rose in that fragrance. It was geranium. And so there are perfumers who will use a sleight of hand. And so even though Taif roses, if you go to Parfumo.com and pull up United Arab Emirates, and there's two photos underneath the main photo, and in one of those photos, you'll see the advertising that I'm talking about. You'll see the Taif roses around the bottle. I don't get Taif rose, okay? Just FYI. If you go in expecting this to be a Taif rose fragrance, and you are experienced with real Taif rose, you may be disappointed, okay? That's one negative. However, the sour geranium mixing with that lemony bergamot and green Artemisia is a beautiful opening. I love it. I absolutely do. I love it. I think it's a great take. It's a great way to begin a fragrance because there's so many facets. And one of my favorite parts about this perfume, one of my favorite parts about United Arab Emirates is how it transitions. There are some fragrances that are very linear, and there are some fragrances that have a lot of movement to them. This fragrance has a lot of movement, but the movement is extremely smooth and extremely classy. It goes through multiple transitions, even in the first 5 hours or so that I've had it on my skin. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon now. I've been wearing it all day. Since I got up this morning. And I love the transitions because the first thing that you get is that earthy green vegetal smell with the lemony, citrusy bergamot and the sour geranium. And then it kind of transitions. And this is where the first big transition in my mind comes, because it transitions from that green, earthy opening. You think you're smelling cypriol, and then it moves. And it moves to that second part of it, which is the floral heart, the patented Roja Dove floral heart. One of the biggest, I think, tells of a Roja fragrance is that floral heart, because it's very commonly done in a, well, not common way, but it's common that Roja uses the same tactics in creating a perfume over and over and over and over again. So if you look at, the structure of a Roja fragrance, many times it's very classical in structure. He doesn't screw around. I mean, it's like a musician that learns how to play, but he learns how to play from one of the legends. Somebody who was classically properly taught. You can still put your spin on something, but underneath it all, you want to have that classic proper, that base. You want to have that base to stand on, and then you can kind of put your own twist to it. But if you just go out there and say, we're gonna try and create this, note listing that no one's ever done before, and we're gonna put this here and this here, and you have no clue about classic perfumery, how it should be done classically, the proper way to teach someone a top, a heart, and a mid. You think about the perfume triangle and the evaporation and all that stuff. It's not going to come out right, right? Roja has a great understanding of sticking to the classical formulas that work, but tweaking little bits here and there. And that's why so many people think they smell Taif Rose in here. But I don't think they do, personally. Now, again, a smell is a smell. It's not, if you smell something in it, I can't tell you you're a liar. It's like believing, it's like having a belief in something. I could say I believe in God, and that, that's much different from me saying I know there's a God, right? And if I said I know there's a God, you could call me a liar. But if I say I believe in God, well, it's my belief. Sorry, buddy. And so that's the thing about perfume, is that creating a fragrance can all be about perceptions and smell. Whatever's in there doesn't matter. If you smell Taif Rose, the perfumer did their job, right? I personally don't think there's Taif Rose in this fragrance, is what I'm saying. Doesn't mean you may not smell it, okay? Doesn't mean that if you do smell it, I'm not calling you a liar. I'm just saying that from my experience of how a fragrance is created, this is a brilliant piece of work, because it can kind of take some people over here and it can take other people over here. It can also take you over here in hour one, and in hour two go over there. And that's a special aspect to a fragrance. That's a high-end fragrance. That's a fragrance that should be given a little higher price tag. The ingredients smell of high quality and all that stuff, right? The transitions, it's like the transitions on a watch. There are some watches that have something like 20 different transitions. They have all different things happening. And the higher end watches, the more that's going on in a watch, the more expensive it normally is, right? If it only tells the time, well, that it does one thing. If it tells the time and gives you the date, that's another thing. If it gives you the date and the day of the week, that's another thing, right? If it gives you which cycle the moon is in, that's another thing, right? And so everything that's added onto that watch is another, piece to that watch's complexity. Hence, usually higher and higher price tags for the things that do a lot more. Is it waterproof? Is it all that stuff, right? This is one of those fragrances where I know I've given Roja a hard time for many different things. And again, I think everything I've given him a hard time for is justified. But this is a damn good perfume. But continuing on with the transitions, okay? So the second transition is that classic Roja heart. And the heart is where you will begin to get the florals. But if you're a guy, don't worry, okay? Because the florals are instantly almost combated, right? So you get that second transition after the bergamot and artemisia and that sour geranium. The sour geranium remains, but it begins to transition to classic rose, jasmine, ylang, which is a classic Roja floral combo he likes to use. Classic French combo, rose, jasmine, ylang. The ylang is very prominent. The clove is not so prominent to my nose. Some people think the clove is prominent. I don't think the clove is very prominent. You know, it's not like you're smelling some of those big time clove just, you know, explosions from old. It's not like you're smelling, you know, the 80s stuff where the clove is extremely heavy and extremely spicy. It's not like that. Because again, it's Roja'd up. That's the only way I can describe it. It's Roja'd up. It's everything is extremely smooth, extremely pleasant. You know, this is the Dom Perignon of niche, right? That's the way I think of it. It's the Dom Perignon of niche. And the third transition is where I really begin to fall for this fragrance, because it goes from that floral heart, and what combats the floral heart and what keeps it, in my mind, traditionally masculine. 90% of the users on Parfumo who own this fragrance are men. 10% are women. That gives you an idea. So don't let the floral heart bother you if you're a guy. But also, if you're a woman, don't let anything that I'm saying put you off. This could be completely unisex. It would smell amazing on a woman, actually. The third transition brings in this undertone of Gaiac wood, peppery Gaiac wood, with the cypriol. And the cypriol is where the fragrance really begins to move to something I really start to love, because I love cypriol. I did an entire video on cypriol recently. You can go check that out if you want to learn more about it. It's on my playlist under This Is Not a Top 10. But if you like cypriol heavy fragrances like this, Frederic Mall's Promise, Dominique Ropion, one of his masterpieces. Oh, this cinnamony cypriol in here, and this is a big perfume, okay? This United Arab Emirates is nowhere near as big of a fragrance as Promise is. And Promise has lots of amber woods. It has lots of, you know, synthetics that just keep it going for 20 hours. But I absolutely love Promise. But if you like the cypriol on something like Silver Oud, which I have a full bottle coming very soon, this got me to buy a bottle. Very rarely do I sample something and then just have to go buy a bottle, and this one did it for me. But if you like the cypriol in those two fragrances, for example, United Arab Emirates is like Roja's take on that DNA, if you will. Okay, it's not as smoky. Even though there's frankincense, it's not as smoky as Silver Oud. And even though there is cypriol, it's not as, the cypriol is not as much of a focus as there is in Promise, okay? That's kind of the way that I would explain it. And it transitions into that cypriol / oud combo. And I don't think Roja uses real oud. I don't think I've ever heard him even claim he uses real oud. Again, back to the marketing. Go back and look at that marketing picture. If you're watching this channel, you're probably a fragrance geek, right? You want this type of content. This is the kind of stuff I would want to watch. That's why I wanted to make these type of videos. Because I wanted to go past the surface and talk and have these type of conversations. If this stuff bores you, you're probably on the wrong channel. But if you go take a look at that advertisement that Roja put out, and this must have been the original photo from 2014 or 15 when they were advertising the fragrance, because it's the bottle with the black, the red, the green, the white cap. In the very foreground of the picture, the bottle's here, the Taif roses are all around. In front of the bottle is a giant piece of oud, okay? And so while you could say that the advertisement is, I don't want to say misleading, but they're definitely implying that you're getting this amazing, I mean, you're spending $300, $400, whatever this is nowadays. You're probably expecting to get real oud, real Taif rose, all this stuff that they're implying, but I don't think it's here. And, but maybe they do use a tiny little drop of oud, and then most of it is not a real oud, and just so they can say it's real. I don't know. We won't go into that debate again. Also, I don't care who the perfumer is, honestly. I mean, if Roja Dove is the perfumer, he's one of the best self-taught perfumers ever, because there's a note in the in the book The Ghost Perfumer, and they talk about the fact that the Guerlain creative director for a long time back in the day basically had a quote that said Roja was never a perfumer. He was a makeup artist or whatever it was. And, you know, he never studied perfume. He never worked on any of the perfumes. He was like on the marketing side of things, basically, at Guerlain. I forget who said that. I forget the guy's name. Heidi Slimane? Can't remember. But anyways, long story short is I don't care who the perfumer is, honestly. I mean, if it is somebody else, I just want that person to get credit. Just like Frederic Malle gives Dominique Ropion credit. If this was created by Julianne Rasquinet or, you know, Queen Biche or whoever it is, I just want whoever did it to get credit. That's all. That's the whole reason I bring up the whole perfumer thing. But if it actually is Roja Dove, I mean, cheers, mate. Congratulations for being able to create something like this, because damn. It's very good. Very, very good. And you know, but the only thing is, again, if you're a purist and you see those advertisements and you think there's real oud, real Taif rose, you may be a little let down if you've smelled real oud oils, if you've smelled Russian Adams and Ensar ouds and all that other stuff, Bortnikovs, and then you smell this and you're like, wait a minute, this is mostly Cypriol, I think, and patchouli, just like a creation of earthy. So Cypriol has an earthy element to it. Patchouli has an earthy element to it. When you combine the two, they give off this effect, this smell that smells very different and complex and very foreign. Okay, it's a foreign smell. And it can be a little harsh. And I think most people associate that foreign smell with oud. And so there may be a little bit of the synthetic ouds in here. If they're not using real oud, I don't know. Don't sue me, Roja. But yes, I mean, I think they're creating this effect that seems foreign. It seems, you know, it seems like it's an Eastern note. It doesn't seem like stuff we're used to in Western perfumery, right? It's not just the normal bases of vetivers and oak moss and stuff like that. And it's very resinous because of the labdanum and benzoin, and it's got this beautiful, you know, warmth to it. And also, once that floral heart begins to kind of die off and the base begins to really take over, there is a little touch of something animalic. And that animalic could be, I have no clue what it is. You know, if it was real oud, you might say it's the real oud giving off this animalic vibe. But there is a little of something animalic coming underneath. I wish it was a lot of something animalic coming underneath, because I like that. But again, it's a Roja. It's Roja'd up. There's hardly ever gonna be a time where you smell one of these Rojas and go, oh, that's really challenging, or very rarely. That's why I like, you know, that's why I like Diaghilev so much. Probably one of his most challenging creations. It's big, bold. Someone told me it's too mature for them to wear today in the comments. And I know what they mean. It is a mature person's fragrance. But yes, it's United Arab Emirates is a good one. I'm glad I got to smell it. I feel very blessed to get to smell it and wear it and talk about it, because, you know, it's expensive juice. Would I like a bottle? Sure. Would I pay? There's like one bottle on eBay for $500. Would I pay that? Absolutely not. Especially since it's a 50 ml bottle, and I got this 100 ml Amouage silver oud for less than what the one on eBay for 50 mils of the Rojas for. And I enjoy this just as much, if not more, because it's a little bit more animalic with the castoreum. But this could be called, if you made the argument that United Arab Emirates is a little bit more posh, a little bit more, you know, acceptable in everyday society than silver oud, I would agree with that. Or promise, I would agree with that. This is a little bit more posh. It's a little bit more wearable. But yes, those are kind of the upsides and downsides as I see it. Great release. There's still many from this Middle Eastern line I've never smelled. I've never smelled Kuwait. I've never smelled Bahrain. You know, so I would love to smell some of those one day, but, you know, it's kind of one of those things. So Thanks for watching, everybody. If you have experience with UAE or Roja brand in particular, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Appreciate everyone who likes and comments and subscribes. We did cross the 2,100 subscriber mark recently, which is great to see the channel, slowly growing. Yeah, I mean, I just love seeing your faces in the comments. I love reading your comments. I always read them. I read every single comment. I try to respond to every single comment. The back and forth and the interaction in the comments is one of the things I like the most. So thanks a lot for watching, everyone. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you again tomorrow with another video. Bye-bye.